How'd you choose retail?
Well, again, I was really strategic in how I went about this. I went to the unemployment office at the University of Memphis, and I said to the clerk, "What's the highest paying hourly position you have posted on the board?" And she said, "I think there is a part-time job at Target that's paying $4.35 an hour." I said, "Please set me up for that interview." And that's my retail strategic process. So
Love it.
Literally. And so I go in, I interview, and it was a store security officer job. And the reason why I chose it, because A, it was the highest paying job posted that day, and B, it gave me the flexibility to work around my school schedule. And I started out, it was just a part-time job. And 15 years later, I was, the corporate director over asset protection for the company living in Minneapolis. Because what I was lucky and blessed that I joined a company that was just starting its growth trajectory, and I joined a company that valued people development and valued anyone that had intellectual curiosity. Because, in going to work, I wanted to learn as much as I could because I've just always been an intellectually curious person. And what I learned is the more that I understood about the business, the front end system, how receiving worked, how the price changes work, not only the better I got at my job, but the more interesting my job became. And I was just fortunate, and that's how I ended up at Target. And again, 15 years, I graduated from college. I think I started there my junior year, worked there for 2 years, graduated, and just kind of continued to stay there. And the first 15 years of my retail career was at a great company, which is something that really set my foundation.
And from Target, was that then to Home Depot?
To Home Depot, yeah. Look, my wife and I, we grew up in the South, and in retail, Terry, you move a lot. And so we had moved quite a bit, but that last move from Memphis to Minneapolis in February, that was the move. No, I take it back. That was the first move to Minneapolis. The last move was from Orlando, Florida to Minneapolis in February. That was the one that my wife looked at me and said, "The clock is ticking on you." And so we went up, and I was there and had an opportunity to join Home Depot. And for the students in here, and for some of the what I would call executives that are still transitioning through your career, what's important for you to know is that in my entire professional career, I can count 10 promotions that I did not get, that I was passed over for. 10. And one of the reasons why I left Target to go to Home Depot was because there was a VP opening that I was one of a couple of people who was considered, and I didn't get it. And so it put me in a position where I had to either change positions, change functions, or look for a different company. And I was very fortunate and blessed that Home Depot had an opportunity in my field, and I transitioned. But again, I can count 10 times that there were promotions that I was in the running for and I didn't get. And in every one of those 10 occasions, I had to regroup, readjust, and determine what was next. And one of the reasons why I ended up at Home Depot was because of that.
And so this is a good, good, I think, education lesson for the group. That many times you think you got passed over, and you look back, was it the company, or was it something you weren't doing or weren't ready for, or what do you think it was?
Great question. And so I can think of one time in particular. I was working at Target, and I had a position that I was so interested in and had worked so hard to achieve, and I was passed over for it, and a good friend of mine was given it instead. And what I was told, and this is a great lesson learned, was told from one of the people involved in the assessment process. There was one senior vice president that was the determining factor that I did not get the job. And I was hurt, angry, frustrated, felt victimized, all the emotions you tend to get. But then I decided to do something different. I picked up the phone and I called him. And I said, look, I understand you played a role in this decision. I don't want to revisit that, but can I ask you a favor? Could you mentor me? Because what I understood is that maybe there was something that he saw that I couldn't see myself. Mm-hmm. And rather than being a victim, which I was going through all that emotion of, this is not my fault, maybe it was for this, maybe it was for that. Instead, I said, let me just kind of take a step back and maybe ask myself the question, maybe there is something about me in my leadership style or my preparedness that I need to work on. And I reached out to him, and to his credit, he agreed. And I spent a lot of time with him over the next 12 months. He was very generous with his time, and he taught me great lessons about things that were perceived about me that, in my opinion, were not true, but as the old saying goes, perception is reality.
Yes.
And so I worked, with him as a coach and a mentor for at least 12 months. And as fate would have it, about 2 years after that, there was another position that came available, significantly larger than the one that I had got passed on. And my greatest advocate for me getting that job was the same person that blocked me 2 years earlier. And I didn't have him as a mentor to try to politicize a friendship. It was more my eagerness of, can you give me something to read that's going to help develop me from a more of a strategic planning standpoint? Is there activities I need to be involved in? And I did the work. And what's so interesting is when I was promoted, or when I took this role as CEO of Lowe's, one of the first people who contacted me was him.
Wow. That's a great lesson, by the way, but a great lesson that you took the initiative, and as opposed to just blaming this person, in a positive way, confronted this person and said, how can I learn from this? I've always learned my own lessons. Kind of come back to this, is that for particularly for you students, that I learned very early on in my career, that it's a lot of people leave a company because of their boss. I mean, frankly, when you leave, it's actually the number one reason why people leave a company is because of their boss. And I try to remind people that you're not going to have that boss forever. Number one, and number two, maybe the organization sees some of the flaws in your boss too. So if you're leaving, you should be really considering that you're leaving the company. But you're making your decision because of a moment in time and a boss. And I think the way you handled that, it sounds like the absolute right approach. Let's talk about Lowe. So you just got there 9 months ago, and what's happening? What's going on with Lowe's, and what do you see as the opportunities there?
Well, we have a lot going on. Lowe's is a terrific company. Did $71 billion in revenue, over $5 billion of free cash flow, over $5 billion of operating income. So just a great company, but a company that I would say started to make investments in the future without making investments in the present, if that makes any sense. And because in retail, even though we're in this omni-channel world that's never going away, and I think it's the most exciting time to be in retail, in certain segments of retail, like home improvement, the vast majority of your transactions will always take place in your brick and mortar locations, just based on the sheer nature of what you sell. You sell big, bulky products, and you sell products that require employee consultation. You want someone to show you how to do it. You want to make sure you understand the features and benefits. And so in our world, roughly 95% of our sales in 2018 happened in the brick and mortar locations. And so that tells you the power. And so one of the mistakes of the past management team was not allocating capital effectively for the core retail business. And so we coined something that we call retail fundamentals, and that's getting back to the basic fundamentals of retailing, and that is being in stock, product on the shelf, having great customer service, but also having technology that enables an environment with less friction for the customers to shop any way they choose, but that drives productivity for the associates. And so the company had gone through a period of roughly 7 years where they had fallen dramatically behind their chief competitor. And even though the strong balance sheet, fabulous financials, when you look at market share gain relative to the competition, you could tell that there was an opportunity to do better. And so one of the lessons learned from me coming in, Terry, and this was not easy, was making a lot of leadership changes. And I had talked to the board prior to taking the role that after assessing the company and understanding the industry, that I felt like we'd have to make some organizational changes and some really challenging leadership changes. And so within the first 4 months, we replaced the CFO, the head of merchandising, head of stores, head of supply chain, chief information officer, head of e-commerce. That's a lot of change. But something that I heard recently and it's not a play on words, but sometimes it's required in order to drive change management. Sometimes you have to change management. And so changing the leaders and bringing people in who had a depth of understanding of retail, but also that understood not only retailing one-on-one basics, but also the future of where retailing is going was important. And so we made a lot of changes. We tried to get the company back refocused. We divested a lot of assets, a lot of businesses and investments that took the company away from the fundamental retail business. We walked away and either sold or closed those entities down so we can get solely focused on driving this business. And although it's just been less than a year, we're starting to see progress. We got a lot of work to do, but we have a really talented team, and you and I know that it's all about the people you can put around you, the quality, the talent, their ability to recruit additional talent, and we're starting to see that flywheel effect happen right now.